Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. And joining us today from the Kansas City Star, it is Jesse Newell. We're going to talk about MU-KU, the rivalry renewed, that and much more on today's show.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, December 10th here, 2021. It is Friday. Josh Neighbors here joining us. Jesse Newell from the Kansas City Star. Jesse, I'm very glad we can take a break from the insane, at least for me especially, the insane coaching cycle so we can actually talk about, some fun things. I saw your tweet, and I think your tweet encapsulates a lot of what's happening right now about the aliens asking what our leaders are discussing. And your response is the quote tweet of the Lincoln Riley Highway being discussed in Oklahoma. What a weird coaching carousel it has been, because I think it's been pretty revealing too about kind of the things that we care about and what we kind of enjoy, I guess.
Yeah, and the dollars that continue to flow to coaches, which is obviously a thing in college athletics, but at least the athletes can make some money. But this whole amateurism thing, I'm a little skeptical still. So, well, yeah, no, we can talk about it. Locked On Big 12 could be Locked On SEC as well, because this sort of matchup has not happened in quite some time.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this, there's a lot of bickering right now about whether Oklahoma State's going to continue. And I think this is kind of a good example of time does heal all wounds in some respects, right? I mean, these two teams are still great rivals, and that's ultimately why I think this game is being played. You might differ here, but I think that's ultimately why this game is being played. And maybe this is the groundwork for a situation later down the line where we see bedlam. I think football is always going to be a challenging one, especially when you consider for them, maybe not for MU-KU, but I think football is always a challenging one, especially if we see a 9-game conference schedule from the Big 12 or from the SEC. That makes it a lot more difficult. And also the scheduling arrangements in advance. But do you think this could be, MU-KU could be the groundwork for something like an Oklahoma State being picked up again down the line?
Yeah, that's what makes it awkward, obviously, is that there's some hurt feelings there. There's like, oh, well, you left everybody in a lurch. Why should we still give you the benefit of playing you when you could have just continued playing in the conference that you were in and not made this decision? So, yeah, this is exactly the same sorts of dynamics that Kansas and Missouri took on, and Oklahoma State, I'm sure, will have the same or similar sort of thing. So, yeah, I think so. There's a lot of things at play here, and obviously it was previous athletic directors for both Kansas and Missouri that made this thing ultimately happen, including one at Kansas who had a lot of Missouri ties going back in the day, so knew a lot of people back at Missouri. And I'm not 100%, you ask Bill Self, you get one answer. You ask Jeff Long, obviously, back in the day, you get a different answer. But, the thing about it is I think for Kansas and this particular game, it's going to be of interest, and it's going to be obviously something that has fans really excited, and frankly, with the pandemic, makes them some money. It's not going to be necessarily so at the Fieldhouse, but it's definitely going to be when they play on the neutral site, when they play it at Missouri, and definitely when football gets rolling back again. Right now, I'm not sure a lot of athletic departments just have the capability to turn down what they know is going to be a sellout, what they know is going to sell a bunch of tickets and sell them at high cost. So a lot of things involved. But, listening to Bill Self this week, I think he's pretty happy that this thing is starting back up again, and he sort of missed that sort of rivalry that this particular matchup provides a little bit more than the other ones do.
Do you think we're pretty close to football, Missouri, Kansas being back for sure? I mean, it makes sense, right? You play to the Arrowhead, and you can get a lot of people in there.
Yeah, no, I have to double check. I thought that was part of the original arrangement. I thought it was starting up in 2025. But if it's not,
you might be correct. My memory is awful, so you know better than me. And it makes too much sense not to do it, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the main reason you do. I mean, think about for Kansas's. A lot of this, I think, always goes back to what does Kansas gain from this? And that's what you've heard from Bill Self for a long time. That's what you've heard from KU athletic directors for a long time. What can Kansas gain from this? Well, if Kansas plays Missouri in football, they have a lot to gain from this, because that puts heinies in the seats. If that game is in Memorial, with Memorial for Kansas, that thing is a sellout. You know it's going to be a sellout. Not only is it going to be a sellout, I mean, everybody now has gone to the dynamic pricing for tickets. So you're not only just going to sell it out, you're not going to sell it out for $10 a pop. You're going to sell it out for $70 a pop, $80 a pop, $100 a pop, that sort of thing. And like I said, right now, where Kansas is, and especially if you go back when this thing was signed a year ago, where they were financially, I mean, it was a moment where they were furloughing their own employees for a
Mhm.
while. They were cutting salaries. They were coaches like Bill Self that were taking salary reductions to try to make ends meet. And so I think when that particular moment hit it was like, look, I know those things happened in the past. I know that was years ago. I know that there were valid reasons to say, hey, Missouri, you can't have your cake and eat it too. But like right now, they were in a financial crisis. Kansas was. And so you say, look, if there is a competitor that's right down the road from you, that's a bus trip that can fill up your stadium, why are you not taking that millions of dollars? Why are you not just taking it? I mean, that's sort of ridiculous to not do that sort of thing. So we can talk again round and round about the rivalry coming back and all the reasons and those sorts of things. But I do think that part of this, at least, was right in the middle of when COVID was hitting hardest for athletic departments, money wise. I think Jeff Long was looking at this thing and saying, man, this is, how do you not play this? How do you not just accept the $1, $2, $3 million of money that this game is going to create down the road just by simply deciding to play this game again? And again, it seems like the fans are pretty excited about it. And at least the ones on the KU side, I guess, because, I was around the Fieldhouse a couple times this week and tons of campers, more than I can remember in a long time. So people around here are excited to get this thing going again. And I'm sure Missouri fans will be more into it when their basketball team's competitive, but they'll definitely be into it when the football thing starts up again too.
Right. And I want to ask you about, like, because you went to the University of Kansas, right? So, you're a respected journalist, all right? But I want to hear Jesse Newell, the basketball fan, not necessarily Kansas basketball fan. Like, what is your excitement level for Saturday? Because you took the trip to Madison Square Garden this year and you got to see Kansas play there. Are you more excited for this compared to that, or was that kind of, look, seeing Kansas play at the Mecca is something that's pretty special? Like, what is your excitement as a basketball fan to see these two teams finally tangle again?
Yeah, I think so. You didn't really expect it. Like the Kansas Dayton game is the best game, best atmosphere
Yeah,
that's happened so far, and that's just because
really.
Dayton fans are nuts. I mean,
Hmm.
down in Orlando, and both sides had their fan bases there, and it's another one of those fun November games because if you lose, okay, you lose, and Kansas lost, but like that doesn't end their season. I mean, that doesn't
Right.
stop them from doing whatever they want to do this year. I mean, it's like, oh, hey, and you even saw Bill Self kind of hug Anthony Grant afterwards. It's like, hey, great shot, good job.
Hmm.
Like it's
Hmm.
not going to end anybody's season. It's not like the NCAA tournament where you're just so distraught because the whole thing is over with. It's like, hey, you can bounce back from this. It's okay.
Right.
But no, this one's different. This is probably going to be the most exciting game of Kansas this season.
Mm.
And I wasn't sure I was going to say that coming into the week, but I haven't seen this sort of student level of uh, whatever the word, energy, enthusiasm. I haven't seen this in a few years, and it's different. And Josh, I'm gonna put myself in this boat because I am starting to get old. But like, I was there at the 2012 KU Missouri game covering, and I was on the baseline. I mean, I've seen what a rivalry is. I remember, Thomas Robinson gets that block, and I've never experienced this before at a sporting event, but because it looked like Phil Pressey was going to make the layup and it looked like the lane was open and it looked like Kansas was going to lose. And I think people behind me saw that too. And then Thomas Robinson, who is not a shot blocker, comes out of nowhere and blocks that thing. I've always described it as, I felt it was like a burst of sound. I mean, it was almost like I got
Mm.
forward, and
Right. Yeah.
I've never experienced that ever. And so, like, I've been lucky because I got to be there for that, and I
Hmm.
understand what that was about. But I'm walking by these people, these college students, that are camping. They bring their couch, they watch TV, they got the air mattresses, whatever, the chairs. But I'm thinking, for me, that was my professional career that happened 9 years ago. For a kid that was 18, you're talking third grade. You're talking
Yeah.
maybe they were just at the start of realizing what college basketball was.
Hmm.
So it's different, man. Like people are starting to realize and have realized like this is a once in a decade sort of thing. And there will only be, again, one, hey, they renewed the rivalry this time. Like, this game is only going to happen once. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what time does. That's what these sorts of matchups do. If they haven't been taking place for a while, is it puts extra important significance on this particular game. So I do think, and Bill Self mentioned this yesterday in his press conference. He said it's been, especially with COVID, it's been 20 months since there's been a real game at Allen Fieldhouse, since the crowd has been at a level where you feel like the building kind of lifts Kansas up to a place and to a level that they aren't normally at. And again, I've talked to a lot of Missouri people this week. I've talked to a lot of people who think that, Missouri has no shot in this, but I'm just telling you, putting the Missouri across the chest is taking this game to a different level. And whether it's 20-point underdogs, 22-point underdogs, whatever the case may be, there's just a different energy with this one. And KU fans want to be a part of that and a part of this rivalry coming back into fruition and a part of the game that is taking place 9 years after the last one did. So there is definitely something to be said about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, is that opportunity for like that burst of sound that's not there in most games? Is that what you'd tell somebody? Because, me, Missouri graduate, I'm in Kansas City in my girlfriend's basement right now. We're going to the game on Saturday. Like, what would you tell first time, not just like fans, but like, because a lot of these players too, these are a lot of, talking about the 18, 19-year-old kids, not just students, but the players, like, these kids, not all of them have an expectation, especially with how modern basketball works. And we have all these guys from all over the place in a lot of these teams. Like, they've got no clue what to expect from this environment. And it's going to be the fans kind of setting the expectation for them. And I feel like it's going to be a situation where they walk into it, they're like, oh my God, like, people were telling me what it meant. But like this, I feel it's one of those situations where I'm not sure people are going to understand like how much it means until the fans kind of bring that energy.
Yeah, they've never experienced it. They just haven't. And listen, for most of Kansas's roster, if you go, Bill Self talks about this a lot too with COVID. A lot of these guys have not experienced a real year for Kansas. I mean, think about it. So Ochai Agbaji is a senior, so he has. Christian Brown is a junior, so just at the very beginning of his tenure. But think about all the other players on the roster. I mean, what about a guy like, I don't know, Jalen Coleman Lands? I mean, he's never experienced this. He's played college forever. He's 25 years old.
Right.
You think about Zach Clements if he gets in. I mean, God, I talked to him after he played at the Garden. He goes, I'm just a kid from Texas. I've never seen lights like this, that sort of thing. But this is, there's just different levels. I mean, Kansas on a normal basketball game against Tarleton State, like, it's a great atmosphere. And it's filled. Fans rise up when they need to. They get loud. These games, I guess I would tell you, the one thing I would do for sure is get there early. Because the crowd,
the
crowd will be going nuts from early on. I mean, that's part of like when it's a huge game when it's like the layup line and the fans are just going bonkers and jumping up and down and those sorts of things. And there will be, I promise you, the KU video department has been working on this for a while. Like, there will be these pump up videos that you've never seen before that will have people just wanting to run through walls, that sort of thing. It's I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be phenomenal. And this is what's part of what's fun about college sports. College sports means so much because people make it mean so much.
Right.
And people care about this game. I mean, people care about playing Missouri and beating Missouri. And so that's the thing I would say mostly is just that for this one, it's going to be energy before, it's going to be energy during, it's going to be energy after, obviously, if Kansas wins. But these sorts of games just rise to a different level at Allen Fieldhouse. And because of COVID, because of all those other things that have happened in the past, anybody who is basically a sophomore or less, or even kind of a junior or less for Kansas, has not really experienced what it's going to be like on Saturday. So, I don't know. The other part of this, I guess you can flip around. I don't know how they're going to handle it because, let's be honest, the pressure's on Kansas here. Everybody's talking, hey, Kansas win by 30. It's like an auctioneer or something. Guys, settle down. Like,
pick your number.
Basketball team to ever walk the face of the earth. Like, They can rebound, they can defend. Like, they've shot poorly, but in 40 minutes you can shoot okay. But what I'm saying is, like, the pressure's on Kansas, and they've heard from their fans. I've heard from a lot of Missouri fans be like, I'm going to watch the game, that sort of thing. And so we'll see.
They're lying. They're absolutely lying.
Those people might have one eye open and turn it off early, that sort of thing. But The pressure's on Kansas. I guess that's the bottom line with this. And to be in this atmosphere that they haven't experienced before, I guess we'll see how they deal with it too.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the actual matchup itself. I mean, you and I guess we talked. I think the last time we talked was before the season. Oshie, like he's probably been the best player in the country so far this season. The shot attempts, he's taking like 15 shot attempts a game. He's shooting over 50%, 46 from three, over 70 plus from the line. And I was dead wrong. I was somebody who thought last year he should have gone to the league. I was talking to our NBA draft guy, kind of same idea there, being look, he might just be a 3-and-D guy, and that might just translate better to the NBA than it does to a college game. And he has proven me so wrong. And he's been so fun to watch. Just the way that he's able to score basketball from everywhere. This is not just a guy who's just knocking down threes. He's attacking the rim. He is much more aggressive. And it felt like good Lord, what was Kansas going to be like if he was like this last year? But maybe he needed that last year to get to where he is now.
Yeah, him and Christian around both. Christian actually talked yesterday about how him and Ochai had together in Arizona over the summer, and maybe it was there, maybe it was Lawrence, but somewhere out there, I need to find this dribbling guru, this ball handling guru that these guys went to in the offseason because my pickup game needs a lot of work. And if this guy is like this and can turn both of them into the ball handling guys that they have become this year, I mean, listen, Josh, the number one weakness of last year's Kansas team is they couldn't dribble. They couldn't drive.
Yeah.
They had nobody who could score on those sorts of plays. Nobody. And now, what is this year's team? What's their greatest strength? Ochai, Baji, and Christian Brown can score off dribble and get in the lane and score. I mean, it's amazing. Like, it's funny because I talk about this a lot. I remember Devon Dotson when he came back for his sophomore year, and his strength, he could get by guys, he could blow by guys in transition, he could score with his right hand. He was great on those plays. And I just said, hey, look, if he improves his passing and improves his three-point shooting, he's going to go to the NBA. He'll be great. What did Devon Dotson do his sophomore year? He didn't improve his passing. He didn't improve his shooting. He just got better at right-handed drives somehow. Like, I didn't know.
Right.
He somehow got better at transition and right-handed drives. Okay. And he was basically borderline All-American level. Then he went to the NBA. Good job, Devon. But like, that's the path. Like, we always talk about this, like, well, if a guy just improves his handle, he'll be great. Well, it's not that easy. Like, there's a reason guys have weaknesses. Like, there's a reason that it's a lot easier to kind of fine-tune your strengths than it is to completely say, oh, hey, I'm not very good off the dribble. I need to learn this over the course of 3 months. That's not easy. And somehow, Kings had two players that have done that in the offseason. And to your point about the NBA draft, I'll say this too, Josh. We talked about 3-and-D. I was in the same boat with you. I thought, like, hey, I think he fits better at the NBA level as a role player. And
exactly,
that's your fifth best player on the floor. That's a really good player. I've heard from some people since then who have said, look, they don't just want their 3-and-D players to be that. They want them to be able to dribble a little bit, drive when they have to, because otherwise you're kind of become a liability on offense. Teams can scout that really well.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody knew this was coming from Ochai or that this was possible from Ochai, they would have taken him in the second round.
Yes.
If anybody thought that this was possible, they would have gotten themselves to steal the draft with the 50th pick. Because they could have taken him and go, well, hey, nobody else knows this, but this guy can actually score the rim.
Right,
and we just
totally
got him the 50th pick. So, yeah, that's why this has been such a shock. I was with you, Josh. I thought Ochai would be a role player, slightly better than last year, slightly better points, but he's taken it to a completely different level. Christian Brown has elevated himself, again, just from the ball handling and being able to drive. And now Key's offense looks so much different than a year ago, and it's not something I think we really could have expected.
So on the doghouse meter, where are we at with Remy Martin? Are we out of the doghouse? Are we occasionally flirting with the doghouse? The big thing is he's only attempting 7.3 shots per game. That's half as many as he took, and it is refreshing to see a player like that in a setting where it's like we're tempering down the bad. You know what I mean? We're kind of turning the sliders down, if you will, on 2K. Right? This is not expensive twos, as my high school coach used to call them, the mid-range shots that aren't good. Where is he? How is he coming along? And how's his relationship with Bill Self? Because I know he got off to a little bit of a tenuous start.
Yeah, it's completely flipped, and it's Bill Self is just so funny when he talks about Remy now, because the first thing he says every time is, I love coaching the kid. I love coaching him. He pushes me. He pushes me in directions I didn't know I could be pushed. He pushes me in directions that other players have never pushed me, that sort of thing.
Mm.
They're still figuring each other out. But Remy has kind of pulled the 180 in this regard, which is funny because we just talked about like the Emporia State exhibition game. He was jacking up all these shots. You saw him play hero ball against Dayton. He was in there and, down the stretch when they were down, he felt like he had to take every shot and Bill Self was mad and all these sorts of things. He scored no points against UTEP. And he's like, Bill Self talks about it. He has layups in transition and he goes up to take the shot and then he passes it back to Christian Brown, who has somebody on him to show how unselfish he is. Remy's an interesting cat. Like that's what Bill Self always says about him. I mean, he kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. But here's the funny part now is the Bill Self, like I saw him. There was one point where Remy had wide open three against UTEP, just in the corner, pump fakes, tries to dribble, passes out. And, end of possession, Bill's yelling at Remy, Remy, shoot the ball. You're wide open. Like, shoot the ball. And now Bill Self's basically saying, yeah, I talked to Remy after the game about shooting the ball. And he's like, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. And so, Remy, I feel like Remy probably has just read all of these stories about him, about how he cannot be tamed, how he's jacking up these shots. He shouldn't be doing it. And just decided, like, on a whim, like, okay, I'll show them. Here we go. I'm going to score no points. How's that, everybody? How do you feel about that? I'm going to score no points. I'm just going to pass the rest of the season. So who knows? That might change on the drop of a hat later. But, I mean, to be completely honest with you, like Bill Self's trying to still find a way through Remy because they need his late clock scoring ability. They're going to need it in the Big 12 because there's going to be tough possessions where you need a guy just to go get a bucket. But at the same time, like this version of Remy, the one that just passes, distributes, focuses on the defensive end, gets a steal, builds up teammates, is emotional. That could make this team really good. Like that's not far off from what could make this Kansas team a number one seed. So I know, again, like I said, Bill Self's still trying to figure out the best way to communicate with him and figure out the best way to make him see the game that Bill Self sees the game. And that might not always be perfect. It might never get to be perfect. But at least at this point in time, what Remy has fallen into and kind of gotten in his mind as his role is not horrible for Kansas. Again, it allows Ochai Agbaji to be good, allows Christian Brown to be good, and it's allowed their offense to be excellent this season, one of the most efficient ones in the entire nation, at least so far.
A couple of final things to get you out of here. The matchup itself, is there anything that Missouri presents that you would say, all right, that's the one thing that Kansas has to make sure they stop and they should be okay? Because, look, I paid attention enough to know this year, this is not a good Missouri basketball team. The one thing that they can do at times is they can defend really well. They can defend very well. Now, I will say that being said, I'm not sold on their interior defense. I don't think if pressed, like they will be in this game, it might be as good. I don't trust 7-footer Jordan Wilmore to do anything. He's not really a basketball player yet. He's kind of a tall dude who plays basketball. But is there anything that you're saying that from Missouri, it's like, all right, that's what Kansas has to contend with. That's what they have to deal with. And they can get by this. It should be smooth sailing.
I should be asking you this question, huh? No, I think
I don't think there's anything.
There's anything. Let me say a few things here. And I was sort of just asked this on radio as well. Like, what's the path to Missouri making this competitive? That's basically what we're talking about here, right? I mean, it's going to be I looked for the line. It's not up yet, but it's going to be somewhere between the 20 and 22.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, at least 20.
At least what the
at least 20.
Number one, rebounding. And, Missouri's been good on both ends in that area. Kansas has been good at times, but inconsistent. And that some of the guys that they have that rebound well, like Jalen Wilson rebounds really well, but he hasn't always played well. So sometimes he's not on the court. David McCormick comes and goes. It depends on the day. And then really K's most consistent rebounder has been Christian Brown, who's been in there a lot. But again, he's a 6'8" guy that's scrappy. But if you have real dudes in there that are going for rebounds, it's going to be tougher for him to clear out all those boards. So I'd say rebounding. For what you talked about with half-court defense, I think is really a good point, because if you look at it, what has happened is Missouri makes opponents take a lot of time off the shot clock. And when they can get them in half-court sets, that's the sign of good defense. That's where you can really force teams into isolation and to shots they don't want to take. But the problem from Missouri, at least when I'm looking at it, is they don't force teams into enough of that because they turn the ball over. So I think it's kind of all going in a circle here for me with Missouri, which is Missouri is shot so poorly that they're trying really hard offensively to get good shots. But because they try to get good shots, they turn it over. And because they turn it over, that hurts their defense, which is normally pretty good. So how can you overcome that? I'm telling you right now, with the way the fans are going to be on Saturday, Missouri has got to avoid turnovers as much as possible. They got to give up. They got to avoid pick sixes.
That's been a Conzo Martin theme. They have not. His team's not take care of the ball very well.
So how do you do that? I mean, to me, if I'm Missouri, they've shot horrible from three. I'm shooting up. Because if you shoot a three, I'm telling you, I've seen this happen a lot. In a 40-minute sample, you can be a 26% shooting team. You can make 40 in a 40-minute sample. You can make 40%, like that's happened. So if I'm Missouri, I'm just so focused on shot creation and getting back defensively because this Kansas team, they are amazing in transition. I mean, this is maybe the best Bill Self transition team he's ever had. You add that to the atmosphere, and there could be a knockout blow there. If you turn over 2 or 3 times in a row, 12-0 run, timeout, over, game over. You know what I mean? You just can't have it happen. So if I'm Missouri, I'm just hoping that the shooting luck bounces back a little bit. I'm putting shots on the rim. I'm going to attack the offensive glass and hope I can get some rebounds and then, send everybody else back and hope to get this into a half-court game and make sure that the lid on the roof does not pop off when Christian Brown and Ochai Agbaji have these transition dunks that just set the place on fire. So, again, it's kind of one thing that leads to another, but I think Missouri half-court defense is a strength. Rebounding can be a strength, but they've just got to avoid their biggest weakness. They cannot throw pick sixes to Kansas. They throw pick sixes to Kansas, then they could get out of control in a hurry.
Yeah, and also I'm really interested to see because Conzo Martin's got a tough time with he doesn't call a lot of timeouts like on runs. He's kind of a figured out guy. So, like
I might want to start.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying is I think the trigger has to be a bit quicker. Final question to you is about the Big 12 conference. We've seen all the advanced metrics say this conference is just as good this year. I think maybe not as good as it was last year. I don't know what the metrics saying at this point about that, but in the future it's going to be. But this is going to be another awesome year. And I think there was some trepidation last year about like how COVID still kind of made everything feel a little bit just kind of a little uneasy. You never know who's going to be there. And also the crowds weren't full. We're going to get packed houses. We're going to get good teams. Texas Tech looks like they're just going to try to be UVA in the Big 12, it appears. I'm not sure if he's caught any of their game against Tennessee. It was awful.
I just heard about it, yeah.
It was awful, yet beautiful. I guess they got the win against a really talented group. Baylor looks like they're Baylor again. Kansas, obviously still figuring things out, but they're with those two guys, like talk about Brown and Ochai, they're going to be towards the top of the conference, obviously. Even West Virginia, a really good performance the other night against UConn. Taz Sherman seems like a guy you can legitimately give the ball to in the end of games to get baskets. And those are the kinds of players that make this conference a lot of fun. I thought last year having guys like McClung and having Deuce McBride and obviously all the guys from Baylor and having Cade Cunningham, like say the cross conference. Kansas didn't have one of those guys last year. Now they do, like we talked about. But this there's a chance this Big 12 is more fun than last year's, just because I think Baylor might be a little bit worse, and I think the rest of the top might be a little bit better than they were last season. How are you feeling about it? And also, I've got Texas too. It's a big question because they got to figure it out. They've got so many new parts. That's a work in progress. But I am more excited for the entire conference as a whole than I was last year.
You just said Baylor's a little bit worse. I think you're talking about next week's number 1 AP poll team. So.
Well, but I mean, how do you replace those 3 guys plus Mark Vital? It's like, what do you and they seem pretty okay.
I think that's the point I'm making though, is like, if I said Baylor's going to be worse, you'd say, of course they're going to be worse. They lost all these guys. Right. And then I told you, hey, mid-December, Baylor's going to be number 1.
You're undefeated.
That's not something I was expecting. So I think that's kind of the theme, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned a lot of teams, but how many teams are better than we thought they were going to be? And I would even point more to the bottom of the conference than the top. I mean, I think Baylor has exceeded expectations. I think Texas Tech has exceeded expectations. But to me, K-State and Iowa State are the 2. where you look at them and you go, well, where'd this come from? K-State going down to Wichita and getting a win. I mean, even a 1 point loss to Marquette, that's not a bad loss. I mean, that's
And
again,
no Nigel Pack either, yeah, in that
I'm
game.
figuring K-State's like coming in this year, they're like, okay, they're in the upper 100s in Ken Palm or something. Hey, they're up. They're like, they could be middle of the pack Big 12 if things fall right. And that's not
There's
something I was
no tough
anticipating.
game now. I thought about like there's not going to be no easy game rather. There's no easy game now in the Big 12. I mean, and Kansas State even had that place was going for a game against Marquette, and it seems like Oklahoma and Oklahoma State might be towards the bottom, and Kansas State could, but like Iowa State's legitimately a good basketball team. I'm not sure how it works when you night in, night out, you're playing Texas and Kansas and Baylor, but like as far as it goes right now, they've played a bunch of good teams. They've beaten a bunch of good teams. And you talked about, Kansas State's decent too. I mean, this conference, the bottom it's not really a bottom, if you will.
That's when the Big 12 has really been its best, is when there's been no bottom of the conference. And I think that's what you say this year. I mean, if you look at those teams there and just over expectations, Iowa State, way, way, way above expectations. Nobody would
Mm-hmm.
thought they would be ranked at this point in the year. K-State above expectations. TCU's been better than expectations. Texas Tech's been better than expectations. I think Oklahoma, they've had a big win. They've been better than most people thought they were going to be. I mean, Baylor's better than expectations. Kansas right now, I mean, you probably put them at expectations, but if
Mm-hmm.
that one big floater doesn't go in against that
Undefeated.
prayer against Dayton, KU's probably number one next week. So I think that's a really positive sign for the conference. And last year, the Big Ten kind of ran away with the top conference. I think the Big 12 is back in the driver's seat again this year, and a lot of the credit for that doesn't go to the top teams; it goes to the bottom teams because, like we talked about, the Iowa States, K-States of the world have really upped their games, and they're going to make for an entertaining conference season when it comes around. It seems like those teams, especially on their home court, should have some upsets in them.
All right, Jesse, I'll get you out of here. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you and your work and its variety?
Yeah, Jesse Newell on Twitter and kansascity.com is where to find all the KU coverage myself and longtime beat writer Gary Bedore. Like I said, we're old, so we both were at the last KU Missouri matchup, and I think Gary probably was at the one in '89 too. So
Mm.
you need some institutional knowledge. We at least have that.
All right, I appreciate you. I'm pumped. I cannot wait. Enjoy the game on Saturday.
All right, thanks.